Okay, so I'd like to talk to you for a moment about deadlines. A deadline is a limit. Um, and okay, limits are not just completely fixed in one sense, they're also defined by culture. There are some cultures in which a date is fixed and it's immutable. You just cannot move it. There are some systems in which that's exactly the same case. You're legally tied down to a date and that's it. There are other cultural contexts in which deadlines seem to be indications of when things should be done. So in this particular case with me, and I think most of my colleagues, I need to explain to you what a deadline is and how it works. So if we give you instructions and we say to you, I want this in on that day in this particular form, what if it doesn't come in on that day? And when it eventually comes in, it's not even in that form. What are we going to do with that? Just how strict are we going to be? Well, I'll explain to you my take on this. Well, I'm employed largely to teach professional English or to teach business management, often through an English cultural lens. Well, the Anglophone nations generally have a very particular view of time. Other nations have different views. Latin nations, Southern European nations seem to be far more fluid. But Anglophone nations, generally speaking, are not so easy or flexible as far as deadlines are concerned. What do I mean? Well, essentially, I suppose it comes down to a deal between us, the boss, the subordinate, the teacher, the student. The boss asks you to do something and the subordinates deliver, or perhaps there's going to be hell to pay if they don't. Generally speaking, in the English-speaking world, deadlines are deadlines are deadlines. Also in the European administrative world, deadlines are also very fixed deadlines. If, for example, as I have some painful knowledge about, if the European Union suggests that a bid for European funds must be in at a certain office on a certain day at a certain time, it has to be in the right place before the right time on the right day. 1 minute, even 1 minute afterwards, means that that bid, potentially a successful bid for millions of euros, cannot even be considered. Generally speaking, folks, the Anglophone nations are of that persuasion. If we shake hands on a deal and we say this is what it is, even if we only say it with our voices, and it's not even in writing, that's still a contract. We're still expected to deliver to it. And if we don't, we might not get paid. So when I set you a task with a deadline, the deadline will be very specifically stated, the place and the time, and the format. For example, if I say, I need this in by 12 noon on the 1st of November, and I want it sent to this email account address, and it must be in Word format. I do not want it on the 2nd or 3rd of November in PDF at 3:30 in the afternoon. Why? Well, you have to have a cut-off point somewhere. If you start making exceptions for certain people, then other people are going to demand them too. How would you feel if you had worked all night to hit a deadline for 10 o'clock in the morning to finish an assignment and get it in? You worked all night, you got it in just before the deadline, and then one of your colleagues said, "Oh, I sent mine in 3 days later. He didn't penalise it at all." How would you feel exactly about that? Really, really annoyed with the teacher and feeling that it was really unfair that one of your colleagues got 3 days extra and possibly as a result got a better mark. So to avoid that situation, when I give you a deadline, it is a deadline, full stop. And there will be penalties if things arrive after the deadline. There will be penalties if they do not arrive in the form I specify. Why do I want things in Word, not PDF? Well, one reason is I don't have a PDF writer. They cost an awful lot of money. So I find it easier if I'm going to correct on screen. I find it easier, even if the pagination is lost a bit, to be able to correct it and write on it and send you back some comments on your own Word document. And it really annoys me when people don't follow basic instructions. So you don't want to annoy your examiner because he's likely to give you a lower mark. So please, as far as I'm concerned, and I would suggest all of my colleagues too, please, when we say there's a deadline, it's a deadline. Okay. Exceptions. Number one, if you have a medical certificate and you're ill for some reason and you can't make that deadline, fine. Make sure you get that certificate, give it to Scholarity, and give me a copy if you would be so kind. If you know you're not going to be able to hit the deadline in advance and you know why, yesterday I was signed off for 3 days or 4 days, I won't be back at university until Monday, fine, be professional. Send me a note, tell me what's going on and when I can expect your work. That's only, dare I say it, courtesy. I'm sure you do that for your boss, so get in the habit. Please kindly do that for me as well. Now, there are sometimes things which will not fit on a medical certificate in the sense that perhaps it's something that's very sensitive, very family related, that the doctor is not going to be able to certify on health grounds on a certificate. If that's the case, go and see the tutor who is designated as being the tutor for the year of your degree or your master's. Talk to them honestly and candidly and tell them what the situation is. They don't have to tell me what it is. If they write to me and say, "Tony, Monsieur Antel has a considerable family problem, and in this particular circumstance, I think it's entirely appropriate that he have a little bit of extra time until perhaps a week so that he can finish this assignment." I don't need to question that. If the head of department, if the head of course, if the year tutor says that to me, then fine, I will comply with that request without any difficulty at all. A third thing. Sometimes, even with our best efforts not to put you in this situation, sometimes we find that you have a number of assignments which are due in at pretty much the same moment, and it puts you under impossible pressure. If in that circumstance I receive something from your delegate, your representative for your class, your year, telling me what the situation is, and my colleagues confirm it, if I can conceivably do it, I will happily shift the deadline to ease the pressure. Okay? That's not any old person can say that. This is the delegate with the support of the whole class wanting this to happen. If it's a unanimous decision by the class and the delegate comes to me with it, I will do my utmost to be able to soften my deadline to be able to help you. Okay? But essentially, as I've said, deadlines are deadlines. It's somewhat cultural, English-speaking world, and I make no apologies for that. You may be able to negotiate a bit, possibly in Spain or in Italy, but not normally in the English-speaking world. And you certainly can't if there are specific decision dates involved within the European Union, or usually with governments as well when they demand something by a fixed date. If it's not in by that date, that's it. So please, 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 a deadline is a deadline is a deadline. Please respect them. Thank you very much.